Thank you. Hi everyone. So just before I start off, a little note. I did not know I was presenting until about an hour ago. So I made these slides just now, so I apologize if they're not very clear. But basically, the project I'm working on at EML, in collaboration with Center for Digital Media and SFUCAD, is called Scholars VR. It is a project envisioned by Dr. Patrick Penfather, who is extremely creative and has great ideas. So this is a very new and innovative project, and the main idea of this is in 3 layers, which is Hector, one of the dev leads on the project, described to me in one of our initial meetings, is that one of the first layers of the project is education, where we use virtual reality to give the user an immersive experience on scholarly writing, and that could range from any type of scholarly writing. The scope is essentially very broad. I'll expand a bit more on that when I go later into the slides where I talk about the part of the project I'm working on. The other is very interesting, which is satire and comedy. We're trying to challenge the norm of traditional styles of academia, almost in a way to poke fun at the boring way academic articles are written, because I know, like, whenever I'm reading academic articles, it basically I have to filter through a paragraph of jargon to get to one sentence that makes sense, which I can actually put into my research paper. So what we're trying to do here is actually show that, you know, that's a boring way. Maybe there's a better way. So we're essentially challenging the norm. And the other, which is basically we want to demonstrate that virtual reality can be used as a medium for education and many other things. So the idea is that in January, we're going to have an installation in the corner library at UBC, which actually has this application running, and potentially, with the user's consent, get them to participate in a research survey where we can collect information and figure out how they actually experience this, so we can make improvements in the future. So the idea of the project is that the user starts off in an open universe and have various portals through which they can transport or teleport into different micro-experiences, which we call microxes. This is a phrase that was somehow coined during one of our meetings. And my team and I, we're working on a classroom microx, which is called attention span, because it basically tests the limit of a student's attention span, given the circumstance that there's a very boring lecturer in front of you. A little demonstration. So while I set up the video to show you, the idea is that the instructor is giving a lecture on how traditional lecture formats are boring and they're a thing of the past. But the irony is they are a boring lecturer themselves. And you have a few little objects in front of you, including a talking pencil and a talking eraser, which are supposed to be very cute and you're supposed to interact with them. They're what we call distractants, who will distract you from the lecture itself. And if you choose to interact with them, you will find out something useful. They're not just there to distract you. For example, if you talk to the pencil long enough, the pencil will tell you something about how they were smuggled during the age of Napoleon. So before I expand further, this is what it looks like right now, as of I think yesterday. This is the professor talking to you. We haven't had time to set up a proper animation, so we have a dialogue bubble which is expanding and contracting to give the impression the professor's talking, and this is Patrick's voice. So
when the lectures first started, I thought that they were quite boring. This is Quantum in 1953. Now, the number of essays, articles, research papers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so this is all I had for a little demo. And the idea is that eventually, when I first heard this recording, I couldn't hear more than 15 seconds because I was bored out of my mind. And that is the intention, to bore the student. And then you see a pencil which is dancing in front of you very vividly. You're supposed to click on it, which takes you to a scene where the pencil talks to you, and that's my voice. Give me 1 second, I think. Yeah.
I'm completely captivated here, but feel a sense of uselessness. Please, lift me from my woe.
Pencil's supposed to
and
be
allow me
animated in the
capture
future, but
these ideas
based on the
as they
development
flow.
we have had so far,
Together, we
this
can
is a
disrupt the notion
demonstration
of the
for our
written
internal
word,
team to how
which is
the
taking
invention is
over
looking
the
in the
world
future.
with Times New Roman, typeset, virtual characters that never touch paper.
Yeah, so this is
If
me
you,
rotating the
but
camera to
use
show
me,
that
we
this
can
is 3D
demonstrate that the
space
uniqueness of
where the
individual
cursor resides
writing
when it's talking
is
to
not
you.
a long
It's on a
lost
stage,
memory
so
or
it's
relic,
the
but
center of the
a
spotlight.
tangible interaction.
Yeah, so essentially we'll have similar of these sort of scenes. What happens is that once you choose to interact with one of these objects, you go to a different kind of scene where they're in the center of the screen and they're talking to you. And it's not only the pencil, we have the eraser, as I've shown. The idea is that we are supposed to have a student behind you. Since it's in virtual reality, we want to have that immersive experience where with directional audio, when you put the headset on, you hear someone from behind you, you know, just calling out you something like, "Psst," behind you, and then you look behind and there's a student waving at you, and you choose to talk to them as well. But the fun thing is, once you've interacted with these other characters other than the professor for about a minute or two, the professor interrupts you and asks you a question based on what they've talked about, but you've completely missed that because you were not there or you were interacting with somebody else. And that takes you to, we created a little flow chart to show what it looks like. So I'll bring this up. I'm sorry this looks like a very engineering-ish diagram because this was again made for internal communication. Once you start off with the classroom microx, the idea what we have is that once you interact with the other objects, you eventually get interrupted by the professor, and if you fail to answer the professor's question, you go into a failure state, which you can, by the way, also go into if you haven't been distracted, because then the professor asks you harder questions. And but the fun thing is, this is unfortunately we've put it as a stretch goal because of lack of time and resources, because part-time and exams and things like that, is that if you fail to answer the professor's question, just for the fun of it, because this again is supposed to be a very fun experience at the end of the day, is you become the professor at the center of the class, and the students throw paper balls at you which you're supposed to dodge. So if you dodge them for, let's say you have 5 life points and you survive for a minute, you go back to the desert wasteland where you start off from, and you get a congratulatory message, or otherwise you lose and someone in the desert wasteland is going to make fun of you, or you're going to have some sort of lost message. Maybe there's going to be a point system, which is going to be part of a larger conversation I have with external developers. One more thing I would like to add is that Vlad, Leo, and Patrick, who are basically the external team, they came up with a really nice idea for a fake robot, which is going to be your companion throughout the journey. It's called a fake AI agent. And once you start out, the first thing it asks you to do is tell me your name, and you say your name, and the robot responds, sorry, I'm not programmed to deal with voice inputs yet. So it's basically fake AI in the sense that it tries to give you all sort of AI prompts, but never can really process any of that. So that is basically the idea we've had so far. And yeah, in the future, hopefully we get to enhance the micro experience which we have created, or add further micro experiences. I know there are some ideas with regards to this micro experience where there are different avatars of different scholars where you can interact with them, and there's a radio that gives you news from the 1940s. There's a lot of ideas going on, but this is the main thing our team has been working on. And if I may just bring out one more video. Yeah, that is basically all I managed to gather in the short time. And if you have any questions, you can ask me now, or you can email me later as well, so I can give you a better rundown, more screenshots. But otherwise, this has been it. The microx, where we test the limits of people's attention spans with various distracting objects. Thank you.